Without further ado, Rachel Bitecofer.
Rachel Bitecofer. Woohoo!
Hello, Virginia. Go. History with the love. There she is. We got you a short seat. We knew about your. Don't you love it?
I don't. Okay, there's my mic.
There you
okay,
go.
good. I was going to say I can't sit in one of those long chairs, ladies. I'm 5 feet tall.
We were looking out for you, so we know that because we want to hear everything about the book. First of all, why the hell you wrote it, and what because before you got started in this business, we remember it's all about persuasion and voters, and you were trying to look at that. But now some of that stuff has changed. Just give some genesis about your career, what you do, and then where you are now with it, especially when writing this book.
Sure, yeah. I want to say briefly, though, so in part of this history, I was a political scientist. I have a PhD from the University of Georgia. My area of expertise is American voter behavior, voter psych, polarization, campaigns and elections. That's what I was lecturing and writing and researching, publishing on. So that's what informs all my strategic work, because believe it or not, there are critical findings from political science literature that have never somehow managed to make it onto our not just our campaigns, but all of our media, all of our analysts on TV. They just ignore two really important principles of American voter behavior. One of them is 1957. It's the first time we were able to measure the electorate's knowledge about civics. And what we found out was that voters know absolutely nothing about how the government works, okay? And
That hasn't changed, but what?
And then the authors, the political scientists that published that, they said, but don't worry about it, because actually they have a cue, they have a cognitive cheat that can really sort the political universe for them quickly, and that is the partisan ID. It's a heuristic, so you don't have to know anything as long as you know D and R, right? And then they went on to write, by the way, wouldn't it be great if we had two parties that were so diametrically opposite from each other, people could tell right away which one they should vote for, which is, of course, exactly the time period that we're living in, okay? So that's what motivated me after leaving election forecasting in 2020 on election night. I knew, watching us lose in the House when we elected Biden, that if we didn't tweak our strategy in time for 2022, the midterm effect, which is a thing, it's not a media thing, it's a real thing, was going to come in and possibly cost us the Midwest, okay? And if we lose 60 seats in the House like we did in 2010 from bad strategy, you lose those governorships. It's almost impossible not to have that happen. And so I was really mission focused on that. And I'm happy to say we have made a lot of strategic shifting. It was not universal by 2022. I know the Biden team is running a great negative partisanship strategy, has a lot of infrastructure and organization, 11 field offices here in Virginia already. Okay, and that's why I do want to tell you, as a political scientist, I used to teach classes on delegate allegation, conventions, convention effects. I know a lot of shit, okay? And I'm here to tell you, the convention process got changed in 1968 to put the power away from party insiders and put it into the hands of the electorate. So really what happens over the 50 years since then is the conventions evolved to be coronation ceremonies. Yes, the delegates are technically pledged. Yes, that's when that happens. But the rest of the infrastructure for campaigns runs, for both parties, runs well ahead of that nomination. In fact, ballot deadlines have passed in places like Wisconsin, okay? So I mention that because I get why many people wish there was a different candidate, but the most important thing for you to know is that there isn't going to be another candidate. And what we need to be doing strategically is not shitting on our own nominee. We want to be lifting him up.
Yeah. So Rachel, so we've had a chance to have some conversations about this, and I do think it's really interesting in terms of so many analysts out there today, people that I might have respected before Thursday, who say, we need to get a new candidate. Talk to me about the thinking about that, and then talk about your shift in terms of how you communicate out there in terms of your messaging strategy.
Yeah, it is frustrating because, I don't go on MSNBC as a legal analyst because I'm not a lawyer and I didn't work in the DOJ, okay? So they don't want me to come on and opine about what's going to happen with the Mueller report or Trump's trials or Jack Smith, because that's not my area of expertise. election analysis, and as I just pointed out, I mean, the two findings, I mean, the other thing that my book points out is poli-sci, finding that most independents aren't independent, they are leaners, okay? That finding is from 1980, okay? So it's astounding to me how many people we turn to as experts in the field of election analysis that and I'm not going to take away from practitioner training. Many women and people in this room right now are getting that experience. But to study something academically, systematically with literature and peer review research is a very different basis to which to come into it. So you're going to see systems and macro, findings, not so much personal anecdotal things, right? And so I will say, it's beyond frustrating that they cut me out of election Twitter world. They would not let me in the boys club. And all of those terrible analysts have 1,000% more followers and audience bandwidth than I do. But I do what I can to correct them and humiliate them in public when possible.
You don't want to be in that smelly club. But yeah, your Twitter, though, is wild. You really keep up on it. People go there to listen to it because I think we see Jasmine Crockett, she likes to hit it. She likes to hit back.
She's so great.
So let's just talk about, I think that's what a lot of us and a lot of people want, is that punch back. But there, I think, let's talk about that. Like when you talk about hit them where it hurts and then use their own strategy, I don't know if a lot of people in the House may understand what that strategy is, because we're Democrats and we just talk a different way, we think a different way, we have a different kind of brain. So explain that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that the book is doing, it's not messing around in the branches of our tree, okay? Like that's where a lot of the Reformation or reform movement work takes place, up in the branches. And what I'm trying to argue is, no, your whole tree, down to the roots and the soil, get rid of it, okay? Because it's all planted in a flawed assumption. And do you want to know what that assumption is? It is that voters already know that, because voters don't know that, okay? Many of them have no idea until they walk into the hospital in Texas that they can't get a medically needed abortion, let alone tell you why, because Greg Abbott and the Republican Party thinks they own your body and not you, right? So, our system, like the hardest shift that I'm making is getting people to understand, no, okay? You're not walking into you. You're not walking into somebody who knows what Kevin McCarthy is and watched a motion to vacate 15 times, okay? Like if I went to the grocery store, even in Eugene, which is DC, Eugene, New York, San Francisco, LA, you're gonna have a little bit better look at this. But even in Eugene, if I walked in and I'm like, man, did you see that Mike Johnson vote? Like people would be like, NBA? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if I asked America to name a famous judge, it would not be Justice Thomas, folks, okay? Even after a year of corruption headlines, it would be Judge Judy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to insult people. It is an interest-based thing. So like, I'm interested in politics. I'm a freak, and I've always been a freak since childhood. I love that stuff. And it took me a long time to figure out, oh, actually, other people don't like this at all. And if you talk to NASCAR, probably not a lot of NASCAR fans in here. There's a couple. I cannot name one single NASCAR driver, okay? Not one NASCAR driver. You know why? Because I don't have an interest in NASCAR. I don't watch it. I don't read about it. I don't follow people who talk about it. I'm not in that world at all. And so I don't know anyone. Getting Democrats to appreciate that that's the clay they're working with, that other people feel for politics and news and current events the way that I feel about NASCAR. And therefore, like, our strategy becomes very different, okay? It's immediately different. It shifts from, I need to win this person over on intricate, wonky policy issue position shit, to, oh, maybe if I'm in a swing race in Virginia, if I'm Tim Kaine and I'm President Biden's team running in Virginia, if the electorate knows nothing and it's going to cost me, $70 million to tell them one thing, it better be that, girl, you in trouble, okay?
So Rachel, so I get that. So if you sort of go in, and we've talked today about different types of messaging strategies, and I do think that it's your audience, right? And so we're trying to get something going. And you and I were having this discussion yesterday, and we were talking about the gentleman from Texas, and people have heard it on TV, but you sort of hear it in this soft way, like, you know, my wife needed an abortion, and she couldn't get one. Okay, so you hear that, and it sort of pings off. But if you say, my wife wasn't able to get an abortion, they were willing to let a fetus rot in her body, then I've got your attention.
Yes.
So talk to us about how Hit 'em Where It Hurts helps us do that pivot.
Yeah, because it's not helpful that I can do that talking to Fennell in the hotel room, okay? I need to teach you guys how to do that. And so, you know, the book is in 3 parts. The first part is teaching you the why you have to make this strategic shift, because it was not lost on me, an expert in voter psychology and in the parties and in ideology, how difficult it would be to go to progressives especially and tell them, you know what, how you're going to win is you have to be mean. Okay? I mean, teaching progressives how to be mean is like teaching a cat how to walk on a leash. It's not something that's going to be natural, right? And it's going to force people to get out of their comfort zone. Now, really, one of the issues that we face is that people, some of these people in this room here have been working on decades on this stuff. But the training that you received was based on flawed assumptions, did not transition ever for polarization. And so when we think about Republicans, and I was talking to postcarders last night in the meet and greet, and she's like, one of the women I was talking to said, you know, I'm talking to groups that still, they don't want to list the candidate's name, they don't want to say don't have the parties on there. I'm like, yeah, well, they were trained very specifically that way. But what I'm here to tell you is that training was wrong. It was just wrong, right?
Sorry,
and
it's wrong.
Here's why, is because the Republican Party no longer does the 2-bucket formula. They don't have a mobilization message and then a message for swing voters. They take something to the swing voters, but it's not what we take. What we take is, hey, swing voter, look at our product, he's better qualified. Her name's Val Demings, she's black, she was a sheriff, she rides a motorcycle, you know, she's Amy McGrath, she flew a fighter plane, whatever it is, right? Look how great our candidate is, and then she's gonna get a couple things, health care and you know, child care, right? And Republicans go into the persuasion pool and they're like, you know, Tim Ryan's a socialist who's gonna turn your boys into girls. Okay, that's their persuasion message. It's no different than their base mobilization message. So they have one message, it's one ring that binds it all, as I lay out in the book. And it does both things. It makes turnout inflamed in their coalition, which is the base plus independent leaners, who are the most likely to ebb and flow in their turnout. But it is also performing their persuasion argument, which instead of us trying to sell a product that nobody likes, because people hate politics, period, okay? Even the voters, and half of the country doesn't vote. They hate politics. We're trying to sell them a product they don't want and they don't think they need, right? Much easier, Republicans figured out with the Swift Vote Veterans for Truth and the 2010 strategy for Flip the House to get people not to buy the other product. And that's why you see all of their strategy and all their messaging and all their talking points and all their centralization is always focused on shitting on us, okay? It's not about how great they are and all the shit that they do for people, right? It's always
They would lose
about
that
us.
message.
And
Yeah. So how do
They would lose
so
that
what-
message of being, they don't have really anything to sell.
Yeah.
Well,
They just do the pure shit.
yeah, I mean, there's that, right? But I'm not asking people to lie.
Right.
I'm asking you to tell people who don't currently, so like that pit in the stomach that you have, they don't have that because they have no idea that we are 3.5 months away from democracy completely collapsing because they don't read the news, they don't watch television, and to them this election's like, oh, the crazy guy or the old guy. We have to do our best in our messaging, our postcarding, our activism, our candidates from the top president, which is gonna do that, the swing races in the state ledge, to the House, to the Senate in Virginia should all be layered like they did with CRT, and I lay this out in the book as well, and we should all be pounding, these people are an extremist threat to your freedom. And because that's going to be an incredibly heavy lift to get through to a tuned out electorate. And my expectation for the debate was that we would see a dramatic decline in viewership because they did it in summer. As much as everyone thinks or writes about how the election is winding down, these analysts on Twitter, The election will not start until Labor Day. It will never change. It's going to start. People have not looked at one headline about Donald Trump in 4 years. I'm not kidding. They don't know about his coup plot. They don't know about the fake elector stuff. They know something happened at the Capitol that was bad. They don't know any of the details of his criminal indictments.
So,
okay?
so Rachel, we have candidates in the audience. You have all of us as activists. If you were going to give us advice today, like you gave to me, give us a couple of nuggets that we should be thinking about communicating different than the way we do today.
Sure. Yeah, I think the most important thing is this: is that if I went and met with the RNC to go plan 2022, as I met with the DCCC for 2022, the goal in the room, the strategic mission is win at all cost. Period. Okay, it's not win and make sure we represent all of the diverse coalition of people that are in our party, and make sure it's all union printing, and make sure it's this and this and that. Okay, it's. So that, as I've talked a lot about the research I've done, my PhD in poli-sci, the history I've been studying. I haven't talked a lot about where I studied strategy. I studied it from military and business strategy. It seemed like a logical place to start. And the first thing I learned was how dangerous mission creep is. Because if you have goals that you've elevated all to be equally important, right, and the other team has one goal, mission focus, it's a strategic disadvantage. And what I tell people is, Glenn Youngkin, and I'm the perfect audience for my CRT. I really hope you guys will read the book, especially the CRT section, because you guys are going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. 11 months before Election Day, I had never heard of CRT, okay? By the time we get to November, it's the #1 issue in the polls. It's the issue that decides the election. Everybody's talking about CRT, the media, the campaign, the McAuliffe campaign, all month on defense on CRT. That's what they're capable of doing. And yes, they have Fox News and the right-wing media ecosystem, but what they have more is centralization of strategy between various races. So someone went to Glenn Youngkin, and Glenn's a business dude. Okay, he's sweater vest Glenn. Yeah. He doesn't give 2 fucks about public education. Period. Okay? But let alone race curriculum in schools. But a strategist like me sat down with Glenn and said, hey, Glenn, I know you're a business guy. What we would do is run Glenn on business shit, okay? Because that's his area of strength and what he's interested in. You're into that, but we think you can win by wedging race in public schools. So if you run this strategy, you might win. And so what did Glenn Youngkin run on? He didn't run on business stuff and corporate shit. He ran on the thing the strategist told him that he could wedge to win. And not only did he do that, the attorney general, everyone did it, all the way down to the state legislature. So the thing that we need to do is understand, no matter what issue you run on, you get the power. That's the point of running, to have the power. So you should optimize the probability of getting that power. Then you use the power to represent your diverse coalition's interest. You use it to help trans people. You use it to help migrants. You use it to do the things that you want to do. Just because you didn't run on it doesn't mean you aren't going to represent it in the most meaningful way, which is with power and policy, right? So getting people to understand, like, I know you might be into the climate and you might be into guns and you might be into this, but right now women are pissed off and freaked out. So run on Roe.
Right.
Well, that's true, because we get caught up in that. Like, we got to, have this, this, and this, and that's just so focused and so important. So I just think that this is something we need to hear. And what is the other when we talk about it? I know you had a question.
I do. I want her to do. I want her to do an example of a pivot, belittle, and attack. So can we talk about that? Because I sort of like that strategy. I'm not really going to punch him or anything.
Oh yes, you are. Trust me.
We only do rhetorical punching.
Rhetorical punching.
Right. You wrote down even worse. You said.
So give an example. Where someone might use the pivot, belittle, attack.
I mean, every situation, right? So I just went and I do a lot of pro bono work. I do as much as I can take. And that's because I understand that you, and who I can't see, by the way, because it's very bright on the stage and I don't have my glasses, but I see you. You are the most important asset we have, okay? The grassroots is the gasoline that runs the Democratic Party, right? And so I want, when I give you tough love, it's because I want your activism to be optimized. You are the most important resource, right? So we should optimize that resource and make sure that it's really good. And so, so they had prepared for me a script for door knocking. So they had a guy who was the door knocker. They had a woman who was the voter. And, you know, she said, I'm really concerned about immigration. That my whole town's getting overrun. And his job was to try to win her over. And so he had all this explanation. He did get in, like, Trump killed border security, which is the most important word you can say. But it was very long, and after a couple minutes, I was like, okay. And they're like, what do we think? And I'm like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I would have said, yeah, I understand that. Have you heard that they're life-flighting women out of Idaho into Oregon because they can't get medical intervention and they have a dying fetus rotting inside them, is how I usually put it, because you see that, right? It's a emotional thing. And so, that's why at the end of the day, I said I wouldn't have done any of the shit about immigration. I would have belittle into town. No, you don't belittle. Belittle, by the way, is a step that is specific to debate, right? So, because when you don't belittle, like the shit Trump said on the stage the other night, if you don't make fun of, like, I love H2O, I have perfect water, right? Like, then it looks more serious than it deserves to look. So you really need that belittle. But the most important thing is the pivot and attack. So this woman is mad about immigration. Does she know that, her granddaughter has less rights than her? Probably not. So I'm going to use that door time to make sure she understands that.
Wonderful.
And that's so true.
Fantastic.
To keep focused on that and the pivot. I love it. I love it. Any last, we got to round up here in a little bit. But I could talk to you all day.
My last thought is this, okay? We're 4 months away from a possible apocalypse.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? There is no sugarcoating shit. Yes, Joe Biden is old. Okay, he's gonna have moments like he had at that debate. I want to tell you, if you haven't seen the footage from him on the stump the next day, in case you are genuinely concerned about him, you should watch that footage because the man is fine. You just can't go through 90 debate prep session, 90 minutes 3 times before the debate, and then expect an old man at age 81 at 9 o'clock at night to look good, okay? It's not gonna happen. So that's why strategy matters, folks, right?
Yep.
And Joe Biden's image is going to be dependent on you because we're going to shape public opinion, right? And so you can have your feels. I'm not saying don't have your feels, okay? Feels are fine. But let's try to have some message and strategic discipline and help rally people around getting this job done. Because if we fail, millions of people who haven't even been born yet depend on what we do this next 4 months, okay? So today I said I usually feel more like Churchill. I'm screaming into a void and I have no power to fix shit. But today I feel like Patton and I'm like, get off the floor, you man babies, okay? Woman up, get it done. Let's fucking go.
Awesome. Get off the floor, you woman babies. Awesome.
Thank you.